Ray was staring at the barren terrain of Earth 2191, which seemed to be a gloomy depiction of humanity's demise. The twisted metal remnants of once proud skyscrapers protruded from the burnt dirt, silent witnesses to the world's transformation due to the nuclear catastrophe. Ray's keen senses detected even the smallest hint of breeze, bearing the sharp smell of radioactivity and decay. He squatted on a cracked concrete block, looking out to sea. The genetic modifications that had transformed him into a new human enabled him to detect motion from a great distance and distinguish between the heat signatures of fearful survivors and altered predators. It was both a curse and a gift, requiring him to watch firsthand the daily battle to survive in this hostile new environment. A far-off cry broke the unsettling quiet. Ray's muscles tightened, prepared for a move. In a flurry of motion that a typical person would not have noticed, with the speed of a human eye, he leapt from his perch and headed in the direction of the disturbance. He could see the picture well as he got closer. A family was besieged in the abandoned shopping center by a bunch of scavengers who were desperate and had hollow eyes. The dad positioned himself in front of his wife and child, threatening the circling assailants with a rusted pipe. Ray's voice roared over the parking lot littered with garbage. "Back off!" The scavengers turned around, their eyes growing wide at his commanding presence. Ray was aware of what he was showing. More than 6 feet of strong muscle with exposed scars. Weaponry, evidence of innumerable conflicts. A wiry man with a patchy beard leading the group scoffed. Ray's lips quirked in a humorless smile. "This ain't your business, freak. Walk away if you know what's good for you." "You're right. This isn't my business. It's my duty." The next few moments were a blur of activity. Ray M. Ovid at a speed beyond human comprehension, taking out the first assailant before he could even recognize the action. When the second one came at him with the knife, his wrist got trapped in an iron grip. Ray could hear the bone fracture as he applied pressure. With their groaning companions in tow, the surviving scavengers broke and fled. Ray's voice softened as he turned to face the family. The father nodded, his eyes wide with a mix of amazement and terror. "Are you all right?" "Thank you," he choked out. "We've heard tales of individuals just like you." "I never thought," Ray interrupted him with a raised palm. "New humans." "Tell them Ray sent you. Save your thanks. Get your family to safety. There's a settlement about 10 miles east of here." Ray's improved hearing detected a new sound as the family grabbed their scant possessions. Sound. The quiet hum of modern engines. He raised his head, wincing at the sun's intensity. Something slick and silvery, unlike anything he had ever seen, was falling out of the sky. Ray said, "What fresh hell is this?" as the ship came to rest on the edge of the destroyed city. With a sense of almost predatory grace, the sleek silver craft dropped and settled on the outskirts of the destroyed city, where Ray observed with caution. The ship's design was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was sleek and had an iridescent shimmer that reflected the sun and the destroyed surroundings. Ray's improved auditory perception heard the gentle hiss of compressed air as a ramp extended from the ship's belly, then the faint sound of the engines winding down. He quickly made his way to the top of a fallen building where he could have a better view of the ship. A collection of figures appeared, their bodies graceful and slim, their clothing shimmering and appearing to float about them. The leader, a woman with silver hair flowing over her blue show, Alders moved forward and looked around at the desolation, her expression distasteful. "Ah, how charming," she muttered. She spoke with a tone of contempt. She called to her companion, a hefty figure waddling down the ramp behind her. "Look at this, Lycos." They haven't even succeeded in removing the debris from their minor argument. Lycos straightened up and nodded, almost dropping his shimmering drink. "Interesting, very intriguing," he sighed. The woman, who Ray thought to be the leader, chuckled, making a tinkling sound like breaking glass. To think less than 2 centuries ago, they fancied themselves the dominant species of this sector. And now, observe them, she went on, scurrying around in the remains like vermin of their own making. The ship's captain, an extraterrestrial with a sharp face and stern countenance, bowed slightly to her. "My lady, we have located a good place to land. Should I start my descent now?" The woman waved a hand dismissively, obviously getting impatient now. "Yes, let's move on with that." Ray felt a wave of fury develop as the gang started their safari, picking their way through the debris with a mixture of curiosity and loathing. He was simply dying to see these charming savages up close. These aliens were seeing his planet, this home, as nothing more than a spectacle and a curiosity, for their entertainment. His muscles tensed as he pondered his alternatives, his jaws clenched. Abruptly, from a nearby heap of twisted metal came a low snarl. The aliens froze, their entertainment quickly dissipating. Whimpering, Lycos cowered behind the woman as she looked around, her previous confidence beginning to decline. A gigantic form emerged from the rubble before anyone could respond. The creature was almost double the size of a typical person, a hideous combination of metal and flesh. Its twisted eyes stared down the scared aliens with razor-sharp claws that glinted in the feeble sunshine. The woman shrieked, forgetting all pretense of being superior, and urgently called for her gar, Dis. The beast, however, was quicker and sprang toward her, its teeth agape. Ray realized then that he had to take action. With an unbelievable burst of speed, he threw himself from his vantage point, placing himself in the way of the invaders and the beast. With his muscles taut and prepared, he maintained his position and met the mutant's gaze. They exchanged a silent challenge. Sensing the danger ahead of it, the creature hesitated. Ray grabbed the opportunity and went into overdrive. His hand made contact with a horrible crunch, sending the beast reeling backward. The combat was fast-paced and vicious. The gigantic claws of the creature sprang at Ray, but Ray dodged and swung with superhuman speed, slamming a forceful knee into its midsection. The mutant was propelled off its feet by the hit, causing it to collide with an adjacent wall. The aliens were dumbfounded and silent as Ray carefully disassembled the creature. Every step was deliberate, every blow exact. The beast was lying broken and whimpering at Ray's feet in only a minute. Ray instantly grabbed its deformed head and twisted violently. The abrupt silence was broken by the sound of shattering bones. Ray's chest heaved with effort as he turned to face the aliens. He scanned the gathering with harsh, unwavering gaze before focusing on the woman who had headed the mission. "Thank you," he responded in a harsh, emotionless voice. Warmth. Her former bluster broken, the woman found it difficult to speak. Who are you?" She at last managed a stutter. Ray smiled at her briefly and without amusement. "Just another one of those pathetic animals you came to stare at," he answered. "Now, once your safari is over, I would advise you to return to your ship." A chorus of inhumane cries rose in the distance as if on cue. The noise will have attracted more unwanted attention. The extraterrestria. Else exchanged terrified looks, forgetting their feelings of dominance. "Hold on!" As Ray turned to go, the woman yelled, "You cannot abandon us here! We have no idea how to live!" Ray raised an eyebrow and concluded for her. The woman blushed with humiliation. "Funny. A few minutes ago you seemed to have it all figured out." "Please," she mumbled. "Assist us," Ray observed her for a while. Instant, his face unreadable. He let forth a final sigh. "All right. But realize this. Your designer clothes and cutting-edge gadgetry are useless out here. You take my lead and act upon my instructions. You're on your own if not. Okay?" The woman gave a swift nod, feeling a wave of relief as Ray started getting everyone ready for a quick escape. Her eyes kept darting to him, this human, this new human, who was so unlike anything she had anticipated on this archaic planet. The woman felt a flash of something other than contempt for the first time since landing. She couldn't exactly put her finger on it, but it was a sensation that made her heart race unrelated to the danger they were in. It was a mix of curiosity, terror, and something more. Following Ray's lead as they raced through the rubble, the woman understood that her ideal, the safari she had planned, had taken a turn she never would have imagined, and she was excited by the idea, deep down, in a part of herself that she seldom ever acknowledged. Ray's senses were constantly monitoring the dangerous wasteland as he guided the group of aliens, looking for any indications of peril. Behind him, the space tourists staggered, their formerly immaculate attire now stained with perspiration and grime. Tyrus, the leader, appeared to be having the greatest difficulty in spite of her prior arrogance. The rough topography of Earth was not suitable for her anti-grav boots, which were made for the smooth surfaces of her homeworld. "How far is that?" Tyrus gasped as he attempted to match Ray's unrelenting speed. With a look of both enjoyment and annoyance on his face, Ray turned to look back. "Pretty, are you tired already? We've only traveled 5 kilometers. Tyrus took exception at the moniker. "Let me tell you that I'm regarded as quite the adventurer on my homeworld." "Me think," Ray scoffed. "Tourism for adventure in completely regulated environments?" Tyrus opened her lips to reply, but she stumbled on a piece of debris, cutting off her response. Ray's hand rushed out, stopping her fall in its tracks by grabbing her arm. The sudden contact gave both of them a shock. Of them, and for an instant their eyes met, still. In contrast to the rough hands he was used to, Ray could sense the smoothness of her flesh. Tyrus, on the other hand, was astounded by the raw power in his hold, gentle but uncompromising. Ray broke first, the contact releasing her arm and clearing his mouth. "Be careful where you step," he whispered. They carried on their journey in silence, the earlier tension between them giving way to a more circumspect understanding. "I can't keep saving you every 5 minutes." Walking across the barren terrain, the group faced a number of difficulties that illustrated the grim reality of Earth after the apocalypse. Their path was filled with rusted cars, their metal frames moaning menacingly in the wind. Ray's local knowledge proved vital as he skillfully steered the group past radioactive hotspots and unforeseen traps. After taking a quick nap, Zach, one of the lanky extraterrestrials, moved toward Ray, making his body tremble with every stride. "You seem quite adept at surviving in this charming wasteland, I say, my good man," Zach wheezed. "Have you given thought to changing careers? There are undoubtedly many affluent people who would gladly pay for a guide of your caliber on their upcoming far-flung holiday." Ray narrowed his eyes and glanced at Zach. "This isn't a destination for vacationers, and these aren't picturesque ruins," he uttered in a low, unsettling voice. "This is the last remnant of my world, the history of my people. It is not available to you." Zach flinched, quickly pulling back from Ray's look. Tyrus, who had listened in on the conversation, blushed slightly. She thought about how insensitive their so-called safari must appear to a survivor of the end of the world. Ray took them to the ruins of an abandoned bunker as dusk approached. A reasonably safe place to spend the night. "We'll take a nap here," he declared. "Assign watch duty shifts." The aliens crowded together, obviously uncomfortable with their circumstances. "I'll take first watch." But Tyrus couldn't help but be drawn to Ray. She went up to him while he was watching the door, trying to seem informal. "So," she started, "do all men on Earth possess your remarkable skills?" Ray gave a snort. "Not at all. They refer to me as a new human. Genetic improvements brought on by the war's radiation. Not every shift was as advantageous as mine was," Tyrus said as she drew nearer. Seductive murmur. "I understand. And has your physiology improved in every way as a result of these improvements?" Ray raised an eyebrow as he turned to look at her. Are you truly attempting to make out with me at this moment? Tyrus smiled, encouraged by his response. Maybe. Are you sure you don't want to investigate different realities? She ran a feather-light finger down his chest, saying, You'd be quite the catch. Ray grasped her hand firmly, but not painfully. Tyrus pouted playfully and said, Sorry, I'm not interested in interplanetary tourism. He was hinting at a smile. Your detriment. I've a howl from a distance suddenly cut through their chatter. Been told I'm quite the experience. Ray's expression suddenly returned to normal. All business. Enter now, he commanded, his tone unyielding. The night went by tensely as Ray repelled multiple attacks from mutant creatures. Aliens observed in shock as he used his heightened talents to dispatch the threats with brutal effectiveness. By daybreak, Tyrus was having second thoughts about T-Earth and its people. Tyrus came up to Ray as they were getting ready to leave. She said, I wanted to thank you for defending us. Ray felt her sincerity as he observed her for a time. I realize now how wrong we were to treat your world as a mere curiosity. It's a beginning, he said. Nevertheless, deeds speak louder than words. I'll see how you manage the remainder of the trip. As Tyrus resolved to try to be less of a burden and more helpful as they traveled. She paid close attention to Ray's explanation of survival skills, even offering to help with camp setup and food foraging. Ray was aware of her behavior and gradually realized that embracing her. As they gathered around a small fire one evening, Zack started talking about their purpose for coming to Earth. He thought, It's a pity what happened to this planet, but consider the resources we could save. We could extraction techniques if we used the appropriate ones. Ray cut me off. His tone was dangerously low. Exactly what do you intend to accomplish here? Zack stammered to find words when he realized his error too late. Well, nothing too intrusive, I promise. A little resource gathering here, with a flame of rage in his eyes. For the sake of the galaxy. This world is not yours. Individual mining enterprise. Feeling the tension rising, Tyrus moved in to break up the situation. There are still people here, fighting to survive, to rebuild. Ray, I'm positive Zack meant no malice. But the damage was done. We are merely here to watch. Ray's already shaky trust has been completely destroyed. He scowled, addressing the assembly, his tone icy and uncompromising. I'll transport you to the closest settlement. You're on your own after that. And should I discover that you are preparing anything that might endanger what's left of my world? As they descended more, they thought, You'll wish I'd left you to the mutants. Into the barren wasteland, Tyrus could not get rid of the shame that was eating away at her. Instead of viewing Earth as a crumbling wasteland, she had begun to see it as a place of sheer survival and resiliency, where individuals like Ray battled day in and day out to preserve what little remained. She knew that the planned exploitation of the planet by her people was horrible, not to mention heartless. Tyrus couldn't sleep that night and went looking for Ray while he was on watch. The only sound coming from the small fire they had managed to start was the crackling of the deep darkness surrounding them. Ray took a seat silently, his stance tight as he watched the horizon. Is it possible for us to speak? With hesitation, she stepped into the fire's low light and requested. With a reserved gaze, Ray nodded. Tyrus inhaled deeply as she collected her thoughts. I've been considering Zack's prior remarks regarding the resources on the planet Earth. I want you to know that I was unaware of any extraction plans. Even so, though, Ray's grim posture gave way to a hint of astonishment as his eyebrows lifted slightly. I don't think I could go through with it now. Oh, I see. Additionally, what caused this shift in perspective? In the dim light of the moon, Tyrus stared out over the devastated terrain, the once thriving civilization reduced to ruins. Observing everything, living it directly, it has altered who I am. Your fight for your people and your world has opened my eyes. Eyes to what real power and dignity look like." She turned back to face Ray, a genuine sparkle of light in her eyes that pierced the shadows. "I want to help, not only to return to our ship, but also to safeguard the planet and thwart any plans that my people may have." Ray looked closely at her, looking for any indication that she was being used for exploitation. Seeing none, he permitted a little, hardly noticeable smile to appear on his face. That was not expected, but gratefully acknowledged. "We have a great deal of work ahead of us if you're serious about this," Tyrus answered steadily. I'm ready, even though I know I still have a lot to learn. Ray, teach me." Ray nodded, and for the first time since their meeting, he felt a glimmer of hope, a frail, flickering light in the middle of the darkness. "Show me how to be strong like you." "All right," he replied. Tyrus said softly, "But this isn't going to be easy." Her normally angular features seemed to soften as she smiled genuinely. "I wasn't expecting it to be." The dynamics of the group clearly changed the following morning. Formerly the distant head of an opulent safari, Tyrus was now making a conscious effort to help and educate. Tyrus didn't care if her attempts attracted the odd and occasionally disapproving looks of her fellow tourists. She felt for the first time that she was working on a project that really mattered. For his part, Ray was struck by her tenacity even as he fixed her errors. "Not like that," he corrected her while holding her hands while she made an effort to light a fire with crude implements. "You must increase the friction." Ray kneeled next to her on the makeshift bow drill, his hands covering hers. "Here, let me show you." Tyrus's heart fluttered. In her belly at his closeness, his body's heat contrasted with the crisp early air. He touched the small ember and it ignited. Ray said, "Now, blow on it gently." Tyrus leaned in and gently blew on the fire till it flared into growth. A tiny flame. She glanced up at Ray, beaming with pride. "I succeeded," Ray managed a tiny smile for himself. "I told you I'm not a princess," Tyrus shot back, though her tone was cold. Not bad for an alien princess. Rather, she discovered herself relishing their jovial conversation, their tension gradually melting into respect for one another. Ray started to talk more about the history of Earth's FL, and humanity's tribulations afterward as they traveled on. Tyrus paid close attention, her viewpoint on the primitive humanity changing with every tale. Thus, during a brief pause, she questioned, "These new beings, like yourself, are the product of genetic mutations produced by the war?" Ray nodded, his face serious. "Indeed. We were altered by the radiation. Others, like me, were fortunate. Others." Tyrus observed the other aliens crowded around, whispering to one another as they conversed. Their sly looks in her and Ray's direction were not missed. Ray remarked sardonically, "Your friends don't seem too happy with our little cultural exchange." Tyrus let out a sigh. "They're not understanding. They continue to view everything as some kind of exciting adventure, oblivious to the true risks involved." Ray's face became stern. "How about you? Are you aware of the risks?" Tyrus met his eyes without hesitation. "I am beginning to. Furthermore, I want to help, rather than just understand." A piercing screech tore through the air before Ray could reply. Ray was up and around in an instant, his body stiff for action. He yelled, "Everyone get down!" as a huge winged beast with leathery wings emerged from behind a neighboring hill, hiding the sun. Subscribe to watch more amazing sci-fi stories.